To our next conversation, in a bid to advance trade and investment between Africa and the U.S., a delegation is leading a Prosper Africa initiative with visits to Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, and Namibia. To tell us more about this, we have the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs, Akunna Cook, joining us on Business Morning. Great to have you.
Good morning, Laddie. Thank you for having me. It's wonderful to be here in Abuja.
Great to have you. Well, you've been in this role for quite a while now, and how have you been able to articulate the vision of the Biden-Harris administration's, Africa policy, particularly on topics such as entrepreneurship, trade and investment, digital economy, and creative industries?
Yeah, so I've been in this role for just under a year now, coming up next month on March 1st. And the past year has been incredibly busy. We've been hard at work ensuring that promoting trade between the United States and Africa is a top priority for the administration. Part of that has been working and rolling out the Prosper Africa Build Together campaign, which we did last summer. The campaign is focused on improving investments, particularly in companies and entrepreneurial ventures by diaspora, women and small and medium-sized enterprises. It is two-way trade and investment, so we are also focused on improving and working with African-owned businesses, and particularly those owned by women, small businesses, and so really trying to leverage all of the resources of the United States government across the 17 agencies that make up Prosper Africa to ensure that we see the kinds of investments into Africa's young people, into Africa's women, and into the many wonderful opportunities that exist here on the continent.
Yeah, but for over 20 years now, U.S.-Africa engagement has received, bipartisan support in Congress, particularly on strengthening public health, developing local infrastructure, political stability, and advancing trade. With your experience in and out of government, what are the greatest strides, you've seen as a result of U.S. Engagement in Africa?
Well, for sure, the greatest stride and the greatest improvement we've seen over the past 2 to 3 decades has been in the area of public health. The way that we have been able to partner with African governments on PEPFAR, reducing HIV/AIDS. We now have several countries and more every month that are reaching epidemic control. We've also been able to partner to fight malaria, tuberculosis, and other infectious diseases. And it is that partnership and the foundation that we built over two decades that has led to the response that we now have on COVID-19. And so that health infrastructure that has been built across African countries has built the foundation for us to not only respond to COVID-19, but future pandemics. But trade and investment is another area where the United States and Africa have meaningfully partnered. And we are looking to boost that now more than ever. I'm here in Nigeria, moving on to Kenya, South Africa, and Namibia, because the United States recognizes the enormous potential in a number of growing industries, including the creative sector right here in Nigeria, where we see great strides and potential as an economic driver in the arts, including film, music. We see tremendous opportunity in the digital and technology fields, particularly given how young, bright, and innovative young people here in Nigeria and across the continent are. So we know that we have to get in now, and we have to make sure that we're driving these investments to make sure that we're part of Africa's future.
Quite interesting. And I understand you're leading the Prosper Africa Economic Diplomacy Delegation, across these countries. And Nigeria is your first stop. What categories of business leaders and policymakers would you engage with, during your visit here in Lagos and Abuja? What do you hope to achieve, at the end of this 4-nation visit?
Well, I kicked off this tour in Lagos, Nigeria, because of the tremendous economic activity that's happening in Lagos, and with a particular focus on the creative industries. As I mentioned, we see the creative industries as a significant opportunity for Nigeria economically. It is a significant driver of GDP, employs over 500,000 people and growing. And we hear, Nigerian music in as far as places as Iceland to New York and Washington, D.C.s, and everywhere in between, and certainly all over the continent. We see the influence of Nollywood across the continent and across the world. And so not only is this an industry that is growing and that has the potential to contribute to to Nigeria's economy, we also see digital and technology as another area where Nigeria can play a significant role in leading the fintech revolution and the revolution in climate technologies, and helping to find the kinds of African solutions to global problems that we are all in need of. And so that begins right here in Nigeria, where we are talking to entrepreneurs, we're speaking to investors, and we're speaking to policymakers about how the regulatory environment, the enabling environment can be improved in partnership with the United States to make all of these objectives come to life.
Quite interesting. You did mention Nigerian music. Maybe I'll get your favorite Nigerian song later on. but in what ways, is the U.S. government helping to bring, private sector and the African business community together, to help address some of the continent's most pressing challenges, including, building modern infrastructure, creating jobs, opportunities for young people, and expanding, access to education and the digital economy?
Sure. So one of my favorite examples of a recent activity that was done by Prosper Africa and USAID in partnership with several other U.S. government agencies is the investment by the Chicago Public School Teachers Pension Fund. They recognized the growing potential in African markets and invested $20 million into the capital markets here, into the businesses here, and that's bringing return to the pension fund, but also providing much-needed capital to African businesses. We've also worked with a small shea butter business based in Ghana to help them export their products into stores across the United States, Target stores. And so those are some of the examples of the kinds of work that we're doing. But we're really helping to ensure that U.S. companies, investors have the one-stop shop that is Prosper Africa. They can work with our embassy and consulate deal teams on the ground. They can go through prosperafrica.gov. They can go through the Department of State or USAID. In essence, by ensuring that our resources, that the tools that that all of the U.S. federal agencies that are involved in Africa trade and investment are harmonized and coordinated, we make it easier for the private sector to access African markets, we make it easier for investors to access African markets, and we make it easier for African businesses to access the United States. And it is this sort of two-way trade and investment that we see as being part of the U.S.-Africa relationship and a priority for the Biden-Harris administration.
Right, and we see women entrepreneurs in Nigeria are a growing market force right now. But how does the U.S. government seek to, support women's inclusive participation in the economy in Africa?
So there's a fantastic program called Tech Women, which takes applications from all over the world. It brings women who are involved in the technology industries to the United States. They meet with partners in Silicon Valley, investors. And I was surprised to know that half the applications for that program came from right here in Nigeria. This is just one of the many ways that the United States government is investing in the capacity of women who are interested in technology technology and technology-related businesses. But we are also doing a lot of important work to ensure that there's connectivity and encouraging our companies to invest in Nigeria in terms of its connectivity, invest in its human capital development, and to work with the policymakers here to ensure that there's an enabling environment, that the regulations here in Nigeria are encouraging to businesses to make those kinds of investments.
And, looking at a growing population, it's often said that Africa's fast-growing population and markets present tremendous long-term, growth opportunities. But what are the greatest, opportunities that the United States see on the African continent today?
Fantastic. So yes, there are so many opportunities, as I've mentioned, the creative industries, all of the supporting infrastructure that is created by the industry, so the technical expertise, the business expertise, the legal expertise that is needed to maintain and drive the creative industries. Of course, digital technologies, particularly in terms of climate. This is definitely an area where I believe that a solution that can help us address our climate challenges could be found right here in Africa. We saw that in financial technologies as the fintech revolution began right here on the continent. And so there are all of these opportunities that we should be leveraging and that we can leverage. And so I look forward to having more discussions, particularly here in Abuja, with policymakers, entrepreneurs, and others to understand how we can work better together to ensure that we are making the kinds of investments in young people, because we know that this brilliance and this innovation is right here in Nigeria and across the continent.
All right, let's look at, Africa trade now. The Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, has the potential to boost growth, reduce poverty, and, broaden inclusion across sub-Saharan Africa. But in what ways is the U.S. government helping to achieve many of the AFCFTA's objectives?
We are 100% behind the implementation of the AFCFTA. Secretary General Wamkele Mene had a successful visit to the United States back in December and engaged across the U.S. government. We are looking forward to supporting his efforts. And in fact, his focus on digital technologies, on young people, and on women is in line with many of the foreign policy goals of the United States. When the AFCFTA is fully implemented, Africa will be the fifth largest trading bloc in the world. With 1.3 billion people, this is a market that will be attractive to everyone, and certainly to the United States. We know that regional integration will make it easier to do business here in Africa, and so we are working with the AFCFTA and in consultation with the AFCFTA to ensure that the U.S. private sector is engaged, and that we are here and showing up, and that as the AFCFTA is implemented, that the private sector, the U.S. private sector, is considered and is part of that rollout.
All right, we'll keep tracking your tour here in Africa. Akunna Cook, Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs. It was great having you on the program today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, after the break, AFEX Commodities Market is next. Do stay with us. This is Business Morning.